the reason why they came into the business is because they love the idea of bringing people together. That's the whole slogan of Saddlers, is bringing people together, having good wine and good food with good friends. And from there has stemmed their ability to rebuild the vineyard, build us this brand new winery, purchase high quality oak, get interesting alternate varieties of fruit.
Today, we're on site here at Sadler's Creek Wines. We're going to taste their wines and also get to interview winemaker Sam Rumpit. I'm Jason.
I'm Trent, and we're here on an unapologetically unprofessional, unfiltered wine journey. I was saying here, Jace.
Our saying is drink more, try more, learn more. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Sam, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for letting me come on, guys. I'm stoked. It's great. I saw your HSP video the other day. I'm like, hell yeah, this is awesome. These are the guys, right? That was so cool. Who's pairing sparkling Shiraz HSPs? No one's done that, so that's great. I've got a sparkling cab. I'll show you guys later.
Awesome, let's do it.
Now we're here in your beautiful winery. Got a great setup here, and we're going to go through these tastings. Sadler's Creek Wines, great family-owned business, multi-regional, small batch, high-quality wines. We're going to dive into that. But first, as always, we're going to dive into the icebreaker questions from the Wine Up.
Is our most memorable wine?
Probably my most memorable wine is when we get together with my family for Christmas. All of my family lives in New Zealand, so overseas. And so the family that is here and our maid family, our family and friends, all that got together. And we have some friends that came over from Germany. And with them, they bought a hell of a lot of wine. And so probably the most memorable wine was this beautiful cobalt blue glass bottle of a variety called Schaureber.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Neither had I. I'd never heard of it in my life. From '97, and it was a sweet, like Alsatian, more like a, I guess, Bier- und Trockenauschließ is the style. So very sweet, late harvest Austrian style of wine, and it was golden orange in color. It was closer to syrup than wine at that point, at the better part of 20 years old. And it was just incredible. And the bottle itself was hand painted, had a hand painted label. It was beautiful. I've got photos somewhere, but just the cobalt blue glass. God, I fell in love with that. It was just a beautiful bottle, and just to drink apricots and marmalade, like our Botrytis Semillons in the Hunter.
Yeah.
But much, much colder.
Sounds
it's
gorgeous.
a really cool wine.
So you had that one. Is there still wines you're still wanting to try?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm probably one of the few winemakers out there that hasn't gotten to go to Europe and try wine in Europe yet. So my dream is to get overseas. I would love to go to Italy and just make my way through Italy and drink and eat my way through. That would be amazing. I love Sicilian wines. Mount Etna, I like volcanic varieties. I like that it's big and juicy. And Etna Rosso in all its forms, Nerello Mascalese, Nero d'Avola, all of those are cool varieties, and I love to drink them, and I'd love to just try them sitting on a volcano. That would be cool, right?
That's gorgeous. Yeah, and eating and putting on a few kgs as well.
Yeah,
doing that.
Essential. You burn it off because you hike up the volcano. It's fine.
Cool. Okay, next question. Who's the person that you want to have a bottle of wine with, either past or present?
Who's someone I want to have a bottle of wine with? There's a very easy answer to this. Hands down, I think Ryan Reynolds would just have the best time trying wine. Deadpool and wine sounds great, right?
Yeah.
I think that would be lots of fun. He's an awesome person. He seems like a good person.
Yeah.
He takes the piss out of himself. He's basically Australian. It would be cool to just sit down and have a chat to him.
The challenging question, what bottle would you pick?
What bottle would I pick?
He'll be trying to push his gin.
Yeah. He'll have aviation gin, won't he? I think you got to go with Hunter. You got to go with Hunter Valley Semillon, don't you? Take something weird and something old. We had a bottle from Andrew Thomas's cellar a while ago at a young industry event that was a 1987 or older. I can't remember quite the year. Hunter Valley Pinot Burgundy. I'd never heard of that. That's just what they used to call Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Everyone thought it was an old Semillon. It was beautiful.
Wow.
Something cool and weird and old from the Hunter. Something like old Semillon would be beautiful.
Favorite grape varietal?
Italians are after my heart. I love Italians. I think for me, the variety that I've wanted to work with for a long time and I've finally gotten to this year is Nero d'Avola. I love it. I think it's such a pretty variety. It's got so much flavor, so much color. And again, that volcanic variety where it's like a sucker punch. It's got that beautiful nose, beautiful flavor, but you can eat it with a pizza.
Yeah.
It's just awesome to work with. It's a very cool wine to be able to get the opportunity to make.
I think we need to explore a bit more Nero, I think.
Yeah, I think
I've
I've
got some
had
in
2
barrel. I'll
bottles.
show you later.
Oh, fantastic. There we go.
Unique food and wine pairings.
Unique food and wine pairing. I mean, the classic one that always catches people off guard, I think, is the champagne and fried chicken.
Yeah.
That's always good. People are like, what do you mean KFC and champagne? That's absurd. It works really well. But what works really well, I think, I grew up in Vietnam, and so we ate a lot of Asian food. We still do eat lots and lots of Asian food at home. One of my favorite things is Thai beef salad. Thai beef salad and something really, really lean, like, Piquepoul is a perfect one. Piquepoul and red meat goes perfectly, so long as there's fat, so long as there's acid, so long as there's sweetness.
Thai beef salad's got a bit of chili in it as well.
Yeah, you need that heat
So you
too.
need that sweetness.
Last question. For people entering their wine journeys, any advice for them?
I guess you start from the bottom and work your way up. That's how I did it. I spent my formative years at uni drinking a lot of goon.
Yeah.
Right? You have to start somewhere, and then you realize what bad wine tastes like, and you can only go up from there.
Goon, the wine in the box
wine
in
in
the
the
bag.
cask,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
Winemakers all start somewhere.
Yeah. There was no judgment there. We did an episode on that.
Do you ever try Goon again and compare back to the wines?
I have. I remember we were down at uni and doing our sensory science course, and JB, the lecturer, big, bold rugby bloke, he's just the last person you'd look at and think he knew anything about wine. And he'd have our lineup of variety of wines that we're tasting all blind, and we had to score them. And across the board, everyone gave this one wine 96 points. And it was a bag of red goon.
Wow.
Yeah, all of these wine students, even myself, all gave it 96 points. Next year, when I went around to sensory science 2, I knew exactly which wine this was, so I didn't give it those points. But I still watch everyone else. I'm like, I know that's the goon one. I can taste the sugar in this now. I know what I'm looking for.
But you're scoring based on you knowing it's Goon.
Yeah, exactly right. The thing is, right, Goon is still, as bad as it is to say, Goon is still a quality enough product. Otherwise, they wouldn't sell so much of it, right?
Yeah.
It exists because there's a reason that people want to drink it.
There's a market for it.
It's still was worth that 96 points. I mean, you look at wine shows these days, and Audi, Coles brands, all of those are going through the roof with what they're producing. They're producing stuff that's winning trophies, and it's mass produced. I mean, it's mass produced, but it's done really, really well.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why Goon isn't the same.
Yeah, definitely. That's
But
your
yeah,
icebreaker questions.
I guess that's your starting point. Start from the bottom and work your way up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't know what's bad and what's good.
Sounds good.
And it's okay to start with Goon.
Absolutely.
I reckon if you could let us know which Goon you had, I want to try this.
I'll
If we
find it.
get
I'll find it.
96.
I think it was might have been a Debort's one.
Yeah, okay.
Let's
All right.
find out.
All right. We've got to do an episode on that. All right. So that's the icebreaker questions. And I feel like we've already got a bit more insight into Sam. And we're going to delve a bit more. Your love for wine. Yep. It was interesting to hear. You spent some time in Vietnam. You're actually from New Zealand.
Yep.
Now you're here in Hunter. But the love for wine, where did it come from?
Yeah, so my parents came to Australia when we were very little. And they actually, my first trip to the Hunter Valley, I was about 2 weeks old. My dad is actually working out the front here on the cellar door as well. Yeah, he's the big bloke with the glasses.
Right.
Without them, I wouldn't have started at all. Dad is very European. His heritage is Estonian, Latvian. So that's like drinking a glass of wine with your dinner when you're 6 years old. And so we really started from the ground up.
Yeah.
Alcoholism. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Alcoholism from a young age.
And you haven't drunk yet.
The love for wine definitely started through my parents, without a doubt. Getting together with friends and family all the time. We always had a very loud house because people were always coming over to our house for dinner, for drinks, all of that. And so I was always around people that drank wine, but treated it with respect.
Yeah.
Didn't drink in excess, weren't silly about it. And drank to appreciate things. And they came to the Hunter, they went to the Barossa, they went all around Australia to try wine. And that's what they did. They drank and bought good wine, and they brought it home and shared it with their friends. And that's where my passion from wine comes from, is to be able to share it with people that want to enjoy it.
So since you were young, you always knew your career was in wine.
I think I remember being about 6 or 8 years old on another wine trip with Mum and Dad up here to the Hunter. And we went to Calais Estate, and Mum and Dad were members at Calais Estate for a long time. I remember saying to mum and dad that I wanted to work in a place like this. I wanted to work in grapevines. These are really, really cool. As I grew up, becoming a winemaker seemed something that was just absurdly far-fetched. Like, no one can just become a winemaker. You have to be from family. You can't just jump into it. It doesn't work like that. And so it kind of got swept under the rug and ignored. And then went through uni, did agriculture at uni, and Charles Sturt down in Wagga actually has a winery on campus. So I ended up working in the winery, the research winery, with a bloke called Campbell Meeks, working with CSU and the CSIRO, working with new grape varieties. And so that's where my love for weird varieties and stuff came from. And it's just kind of stemmed from there, being a winemaker.
Yeah. And then you achieved your goal because you became a winemaker. You're a winemaker here in Sadler's Creek Wines.
Yep.
Sadler's Creek Wines is an interesting story. Are you able to talk about a bit of the history and what makes it special?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sadler's Creek really started in the 90s. And it was very much built from the ground up. The first vines went in, the PID came in and got all that set up. So we had irrigation connected to the dam and we were connected to town water, one of the few wineries in the area that is. So even if we run out of river water, we can still get water from town. Thank goodness, because we've had some bad years up here. They planted all the grapes by hand. Originally, this building was a cork factory. There used to be a big exhaust shed over there that spat all the exhaust out from the cork factory. That closed down. And the shed itself got turned into a winery and a barrel storage area. Sadler's has always grown fruit on site, but we've also always got fruit from South Australia. So we've been buying from the same vineyards in South Australia, the Follett family down at Lake Breeze in Langhorne Creek, for as long as I've been alive. So for 26 years, we've been buying the exact same fruit from the same blocks. And it's always been good quality. Sadler's Creek was actually in relation to the love of the original owners' love for horses and the Kentucky Derby. So we actually have a label called the Bluegrass label, which again is in relation to that whole Kentucky Southern style stuff, the American oak that we use. All of that relates back to those original owners and their love for the horses, the Kentucky Derby, and Southern style living.
You talked about Sadler's Creek. It started around the 1970s, but I guess
1990s.
90s, so?
Yep, 90s. We're not quite that old. We're still babies.
And recently, I guess, the Laureti family purchased it. They were part of the wine club as well.
Absolutely.
Do you know what kind of made them kind of invest further into it?
Yeah, well, Frank was a lover of all of our bluegrass. Bluegrass has been the flagship of Sadler's forever and a day. And he loved it, and he caught wind of the fact that Sadler's was selling. And at the time, the vineyard was struggling a bit and the owners needed to get out. And Frank and Wendy came in and called up Brett one afternoon and said, we'd like to buy the business. And so they did. And their love for wine, their Italian heritage as well, has allowed us to build on what Sadler's was to make it into something incredible. I think the reason why they came into the business is because they love the idea of bringing people together. That's the whole slogan of Sadler's, is bringing people together, having good wine and good food with good friends. And from there has stemmed their ability to rebuild the vineyard, build us this brand new winery, purchase high quality oak, get interesting alternate varieties of fruit, grow a massive following of members and people that want to drink our wine because we support that desire to be around other people. And as I said before, growing up, that is what my childhood was being around other people and drinking good wine. And so Sadler's very much just seemed like the sort of place that I would fit in, and it's just growing and growing and growing because of that.
And it feels like that's kind of the environment that we're in. Going through the cellar door, going through the outside, there's a lot of specific designated spaces where it's, yes, you're going to have some great wine, but also you're going to have some memories with the people around you because you've got chandeliers around, you've got cushions, you've got different dark spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole works, the wine bar sort of vibe that's in the cellar door. We have the lovely picnic area outside. In about half an hour, we'll start hearing the live music start up as well that we have going all weekend as well. It is made to be a place where people want to come and spend time and have their friends be here and enjoy themselves. That's the whole purpose of building a business like this, is to make people want to be here. And I think they've done a killer job. And like you said, all those spaces that they've built, the picnic area, great for weddings, great for functions, the cellar door area outside and inside. I mean, a beautiful day like today. It's it's hard to choose. You want to be inside in that beautiful dark cellar door wine bar, speakeasy sort of room, or out getting a tan in the sun. Both
you've got
spots are good,
options.
right?
I love the idea about tasting wine in the twilight. So you're open till about 7 o'clock. You can still you can see
absolutely.
the stars coming out. It's a great occasion. We've got some wines here in front of us that we should probably try as well.
For sure.
So, what have we got?
Well, the first one in your glass is our Piquepoul Blanc, or as we've called it, Avillo Piquepoul. Now, we made a Piquepoul last year in 23 that was a dry style of Piquepoul. It had a little bit of oak time in it, had some lees contact. It was made as a halfway point between Aaron Mercer's and Ash Horner's Piquepouls. And so all three of them were very different styles. This year we called it the Avillo to denote that is not the same. This Avillo is the Catalonian name for Piquepoul. And so we wanted to denote that it is a completely different style and it is sweet. It's an Alsatian style of Piquepoul. So it's that cold climate and higher residual sugar. So we cut the ferment early at about 12 grams, and that has allowed for this beautiful texture to stay in the wine. It has this really mouth-filling quality. That lemon and beeswaxy character from the oak is up the front and in the back palate of the wine. It just keeps going. We find balancing sugar and acid is probably one of the most challenging things you can do in wine. If you go too far one direction, you get this really almost like char siu sort of sweet and sour flavor that you don't really want to see, or sour cherry in a bad way. And so we tend to go through until we can see the sugar. Yeah. And then once we see the sugar, we're like, okay, it probably needs just a little bit less. And so we let it ferment just a little bit longer, and then it's good to go.
So the reasoning to kind of create this style of Piquepoul, is that through curiosity? Is it through where you see the market? Is it through something else?
Absolutely, part of all of those things. Yeah. I have a huge curiosity for things that I've never heard of. Piquepoul is something that's come onto the scene out of the blue in the last 5 years, really, especially in New South Wales. There's a few of them in South Australia, not many, but it's all been done that same dry table wine style, made like a Semillon or a Riesling. And so we wanted to take that step and I guess be those first people to do something different with something that's already completely different, which is what led us to that. We see the market going this way. You have to have new products for people to want to try and be interested in things, but obviously it needs to be good wine for people to want to drink it. But you need to have these new varieties to be able to keep up with the way the climate is going. That's probably one of the big things. We can only keep growing what we've got into the Hunter Valley for so long. We're going to need to change eventually. There's no two ways about it. The way the climate is getting hotter, you look at this year and it's probably the earliest vintage that we've ever seen. Yeah. So we need new varieties and to experiment with new varieties to see how they'll grow in these regions. Now we don't have Piquepoul here is up in northern New South Wales from Canowja. So we get that fruit shipped down. All three of us, Aaron and Horner and myself, all get the fruit from the same vineyard. And we need to trial with these varieties before we can actually see what's going to, make it on the market, to be bothered to bring it into the Hunter Valley to try and grow it down here. Yeah. And so far, Piquepoul has been red hot. People love it. Aaron made a brilliant pet nat style of Piquepoul when he first did it, and that was incredible. Ash has made his in a very traditional Chardonnay style. At least that's how I see it. And it's to die for. It's textural, it's big and juicy. So it has a lot of marketability and a lot of versatility, much like Chardonnay does.
Yeah. It's a really interesting wine because when my mind is processing it, I'm like, hold on, I've got this lemon and now it's contrasting with the sweetness, and they're kind of doing a bit of a dance together, but they work. And this is the first time, I think I've had Piquepoul probably 3 or 4 times in my life, but first time to have it as an off-dry. Yep. It's really nice.
It's quite an aromatic wine, but I definitely get those kind of lemons, but I like that kind of, the sweetness gives that kind of viscosity as well to the wine.
Of course.
I feel that it's kind of on market because we've all had those kind of searing acidity type of wines, and this kind of makes it a bit more approachable. Yeah,
awesome. Well, that's what we're going for. That sugar sells. It's just a fact. Sugar sells. People get addicted to sugar and it sells. Having that wine that starts to look a bit more like a tropical fruit salad, something that you can open up in the sun, you can sit down and drink it, and you can really think about it if you want to, or you can just drink it and enjoy it. Yeah. That's the key to making a wine like this. And this is one of those ones that you can do both with. You can look at it, really get invested into the wild ferment that's in there, the oak thyme, the lees stirring, the cut ferment, the high residual sugar, or you can just sit in the sun and drink it by the pool. You don't need to do both. You can do one or the other. It's great.
So the experimentation, first time doing it this year, is this going to continue, or is this more we want to kind of do with this wine?
The Winemakers Craft label is where we experiment. It's where we put wine that we want to see how it goes, what we can do with it. It's basically our playground. Alessandro Reserve that we have there in the Sadler's label are both staples. They're there. We know how to do it. And so we'll keep doing that. Winemakers Craft is where we get to play. And so that's what this is. It's playing around. And the Sadler's range is moving into being 100% New South Wales. Currently, it's a bit expansive and it has stuff from Barossa Valley, has stuff from South Australia all over the place as well. But we want to bring it back to be 100% New South Wales. So once we get this Piquepoul right, we find a style that we want to make, then that Piquepoul will eventually likely find its way into the Sadler's because it's a New South Wales variety.
So this is the one that you trial, see what sticks.
Absolutely.
What sticks you put into the Sadler's
Yep,
range.
exactly right. And I think it's important to make it clear that means that the Sadler's range is not just a white label range. It's not just you see it on the shelf at Dan Murphy's. It's the stuff that we know we can make. It's the stuff that we think is good enough to be able to be sold and be enjoyed. It's not just there to be, oh, that's the Sadler's white label. It's we've experimented, we've found the solution. Here you go. This is the good wine that we can make out of this.
You talked about Thai beef salad before. I feel like this is really good at some Asian foods as well. A bit of acidity, with that sugar as well.
Absolutely. I mean, Nyok cham is my favorite thing in the whole world, right? I love fish sauce more than anything. And this just goes perfectly with that sort of flavor profile, right? That saltiness.
I don't know many people that go, I love fish sauce, but you're special. That's great.
Have you had shrimp paste?
I have. I remember when I was going to school in Vietnam and we went on a school excursion to Hanoi. And as part of the school excursion, we actually went to a fish sauce and shrimp paste factory. I've never had that smell leave my mind. It's the most memorable thing on the planet. It is the worst thing I have ever smelt. Like dry fermenting fish in the hot sun.
Yeah.
Seriously.
They say the worse it smells, the better it tastes.
It would taste great. Like I said, I love fish sauce. I don't like the smell of it, but the taste of it, God, it adds a lot. And like I said, that's fishy, umami salinity just goes so well with that sweeter profile in wines like this, right? And the acid balances that salinity as well.
I love what we're doing with the Winemakers Craft here. What else is on the horizon in terms of experimentation?
Well, I mean, we've got something that our members have been asking for the last 2 or 3 years now, sitting right behind you guys. The 24 Monty will be going to bottle next year. And that is probably one of the biggest selling Italians we've ever had. Now, Montepulciano is one of the more well-known Italian varieties, but it's still going to that Winemakers Craft because it is from South Australia. It's from the McLaren Vale. It's from the McLaren Vale. I should know this off the top of my head, shouldn't I? That's McLaren Vale Montepulciano. And it's just beautiful fruit that we get to experiment with. We like trialing new vineyards from down there. So that this is a new vineyard. It's slightly different to the last one, but it will be going into that Winemakers Craft, all into that single suitcase, that range that we have down the end, which is a nod to our Italian history. Having Italian owners of Sadler's means I'm very lucky that I can just go to them and say, I want to try this variety, it's Italian. And they're like, that's a great idea, Sam. You should absolutely do that. Obviously, things cost money, so we have to say, Sam, slow down a little bit here and there. I get a bit excited during vintage when I see all of this fruit going for sale. I'm like, oh, I could get some of that. And that's all the stuff that I like to experiment with. But having Frank and Wendy being in charge, they're very willing to let us experiment.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of like they've given you the reins to trial, see what works. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like I said before, they have that trust in us to have faith that if we get this fruit, we're going to do something good with it. Now we have, like I said, we have alternate varieties, but we are starting to look at more alternate styles of winemaking as well. Wild ferments have been something that we really haven't looked at full stop in the last 2 years. We've started looking at it more and more. There's nothing wrong per se with wild ferments. They just need to be very well managed. One of our best-selling wines we have ever made, the wild wine, our members will know this because they love this wine, was a wild ferment. And the first time we made that wine was an accident. We had leftover juice from that vintage. Everything was in tank, and we had just had some stuff that wouldn't fit into tank. So we put it into a different tank and blended it all together. So it was a couple of different varieties in there. And it was a Friday arvo. We grabbed our beer, put it into tank, turned the cooling on, and then left for the weekend. And we got back on Monday to find out we hadn't turned the cooling on. And so it had gone through its own wild ferment in the course of 2 days rather than 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. And what that had done is when ferments get quite hot, they die. And it cut itself early, and we had a lot of residual sugar sticking around. And so that wild white has just a splash of residual sugar in it. And what are we going to do with it? We'll tidy it up a little bit, make sure it tastes good, put some more acid into it, fingers crossed, all is going well, put it into a bottle, and it sold out in like 3 months. Wow. We never saw this coming. So ever since then, we were trying to replicate it. And as of last year, that wild white style has made its way into the Sadler's range because we figured it out.
Yeah.
We figured out how to get it done now.
Yeah. So what grape variety is it?
The current one, the 23, is a blend of Arnay, Fiano, Semillon, and Verdelho.
Okay.
Yep. So
is that a regular blend? I've never heard of that.
No, it's not at all. So we, it really is just that what we have kind of lying down at the end of the year that we don't know about or where something needs to go. We just put it into a tank and we say, this is our wild white blend. It's starting now, and see what happens. And so this was fruit. Some of it was stuff that we didn't have that we got from elsewhere. The Arnay and Fiano, we've never made one of those. We're looking at it. We're trying to get that fruit, but we just had some leftover stuff that we were able to chuck into a tank.
Yeah, we do that in Chinese restaurants. It's called special fried rice.
Yum. The best.
And mark it up.
Everything chucked in there. Perfect.
Now, should we move on to the rosé?
Rosé is something I personally am very passionate about. I love rosé. I think rosé, it requires just as much good winemaking and skill to make a good rosé as it does to make a good white and a good red. And I think the greatest injustice in wine is people taking the piss out of rosé. Now, don't get me wrong, there are rosés out there that are literally just sugar water. Those aren't the best ones out there. But rosés can be made to be very fine-boned, very pretty, delicate wines, or big, robust styles of rosé as well. There's so much spectrum for it, which I love. Last year, we did a Tempranillo rosé. The year before, we had a Shiraz Merlot rosé that was very textural, very full-bodied, quite dark red, but bone dry. This year, we have Sangiovese rosé. And quite often, when people make rosé, one of the dirty secrets of winemaking is they clean up the color. Cleaning up the color is the colloquial way of putting it, but they fine the wines with all sorts of products. Charcoal is the main one that they use to clean color out of wines and reduce the intensity of color. Sometimes they use PVPP, which is a microplastic. They use all sorts of different things. I refuse to have that in here. I have no charcoal. I have no PVPP. The only thing I have in here is clay, and that's what we use for stabilizing proteins in wine. And so people will add those things to wine to get it to this sort of peachy, light color. Yeah. I refuse to. The best way you can make rosé is to pick your grapes for rosé. So often do people pick grapes to be a dry red table wine, and then they try and bleach the color out of it from there. We go out of our way to pick this earlier than you would pick a normal red grape. So the acid is higher and the amount of color that you can extract is lower. And it just makes sense because you don't have to intervene as much with the wine. It is as simple as possible. The fruit came in, we pressed it, and that was it. That's the color that we get. Nothing changes. And so it's all about picking your fruit at the right time to get the right color and the right acid to make a really pretty wine. And you can see it's closer to water than it is wine, right? Quite often you put it into a glass and people will think it's a glass of white wine because it is so pale in color. And that Provence style is what people like to drink at the moment. People like pretty pink, orange, salmon, whatever you want to call it, colored wines. And they're fun to make as well. Like I said, I love making rosé because it's fun to make. You get halfway through ferment where there's about 80 grams a litre of sugar left in the juice, and it tastes just like creaming soda. It's incredible, right? You mix that with some gin, you're set. It's just a beautiful way to drink wine when it's not
That's
done.
what you should have with Ryan Reynolds then.
Yeah, that's what I should have. Yeah. You're absolutely right. He can come during ferment. I'll get him jumping some grapes. And it's Sangiovese, and it's a cool Italian variety. Again, Sangi is one of those ones that's coming up. People might remember back in the day when it came in little wicker baskets from Italy, from Chianti. These days, it is very much a high-quality Australian variety. People are making some incredible versions of this. I'm trying my best to get my hands on some more so I can make a red wine out of it. But I think this is a beautiful little wine. It's not so much in that strawberries and cream spectrum as it is leaning into, I guess, pink grapefruit and guava, that sour orange sort of spectrum.
I think it's more of a white than the red.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really quite densely aromatic as well. It's got some beautiful creaminess on the nose.
It smells beautiful. What would you have with this one in terms of food?
I think kebabs. This is a like beef skewers, chicken skewers, or something like that. I mean, you just get them from Coles, or you make them yourself, right? Chuck them on the barbecue, get some char on something, or lamb chops.
Yeah.
Good char grilled lamb chops and a nice rosé go a hell of a long way. Yeah, the acid and that fruit cutting through the char, and it blends so nicely with the fat. You need something that's got fat on it. Don't be silly and get lamb chops that don't have
the
fat.
acid's quite high.
That's a really cracking rosé. I really like that one.
I'm stoked you guys think so. Like I said, I'm very passionate about my rosés, so any compliments I get on it, I love. It's I want people to have more respect for the winemaking of rosé. So often you have people come into the cellar door and they will say, "Oh, big bloke, I don't drink rosé, absolutely not." I'm like, well, tough. I'm going to pour it into your glass and you're going to drink it and you're going to enjoy it. Because they do. Everyone enjoys rosé. There's just big, angry men that don't want to admit that they like pink drinks, right?
I said to Jason, we call it brosé.
Brosé, it's great. Yeah. Exactly right. I mean, I've got my own little Instagram page where I actually review rosés called Rooftops and Rosés, where I climb on the roof and drink rosé and post about it. And it's just my Thursday afternoon. It's great.
Yeah,
that's an awesome idea.
Do people know that you're jumping onto their rooftops? Or
it's just my roof usually.
Oh, it's just your roof.
Sometimes it's my old housemate's roof. It's easier to get onto his roof than it is mine.
Yeah.
But I haven't tried getting onto the neighbour's roof yet. We'll try that next week.
Yeah.
Central Ranges? Where is Central Ranges?
Yeah, Central Ranges. Typically, that would imply Cowra. But this, much like the Piquepoul, is from Canowindra, which is just about an hour and a half away from Cowra. Quite high altitude and cooler climate. I believe the fruit or the vineyard itself is actually organic. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it is. So that's cool to work with more organic styles of fruit as well. I can't put that on the bottle because I don't have an organic winery. Yeah. But that's just a $10,000 sticker that you have to pay for each year. So
I think part of the reason why I like it is because you're using Sangiovese.
Yeah.
I've tried the others like Shiraz, Rosés.
It's always that, I find it's always that really dense strawberries and cream character you get out of wines like that, right? I've said it before, it's a shame to not have a hill to die on, right? And the hill that I will die on is that Italian varieties make the best rosés. I just think they tend to be more interesting. They tend to be more textural. Now, I'd love to blend it with other varieties as well, make a blended Italian rosé. That would be really cool. But I think the style of wine you get out of Italian rosés has just got a lot of character to it. And so Sangiovese being one of those, a light skin variety already, it's got really thin skin, so it's quite delicate, still providing that much flavor, even though it's harvested early for rosé, is incredible. And that just goes to show the quality of good Italian fruit.
Yeah, I think that's the key, that intensity of flavor, whereas sometimes the other rosés is a bit kind of washed out.
Yeah, well, that's when that charcoal and that PVPP and fish guts and stuff that people put into wine really sucks out the flavor. Because there's none of that in here, you get so much flavor. It just kind of pops in your mouth.
Is there a way to tell if someone's put fish guts in wine?
The only way you can really tell is if it says might contain fish products on the back of the bottle. But when it comes to fining in general, the fining process is usually so minute that even if you had an allergy to something that went into it, it's almost certainly being filtered out through like a 0.25 micron filter. So there's nothing going through. Like, we will put milk into some of our wines and we're putting like mils to the litre into our wine. So I might have, I guess clay is probably the best one that we can use, bentonite. And I'll put 1.6 grams per litre of bentonite clay, which is a special sodium calcium clay that binds to protein particles and gets rid of the haziness in wines. And so in a 4,500 litre tank, I might put 50 kilos of bentonite into it. And that's all just sinks to the bottom and just gets taken out. There's none of that gets into the wine and the finished product. It all gets filtered out completely. Even if you put milk into the wine, we then put the bentonite on top of that. That then binds to the milk proteins and sinks all that to the bottom. You clarify everything else and you just get left with mud in the bottom of the tank.
So what's the milk do? Why do you add the milk to the wine?
When it comes to fining, different sizes and shapes of proteins will bind different particles. So proteins tend to bind phenolics and bitter particles in wine. So casein, which is what we use in milk, is a large globular protein. A large globular protein will bind small phenolic compounds in the wine and sink that out. Now, those small phenolic compounds might be things that taste like bitter almond or a really harsh bitter lemon sort of thing. We want lemon flavor in something like Semillon, but we don't want it to be harsh. So we add a little bit of milk. That bitterness or that sometimes a green character will then bind to the casein molecule and just sink to the bottom of the wine, and it tends to disappear. Now, you can't add too much where you kill the wine or add too little and it doesn't do enough. You got to find that sweet spot. So we go through and we have trials of 20 different rates of additions to each wine and look at those to find which one's the best. But it's not something that you need to do, but it can improve the quality of the wine. Just like fining with charcoal and PVPP can sometimes improve the quality of the wine as well. I by no means want to bag that out too much, but everything is done to make wine better.
It's a tool set of
exactly right.
winemaking, and you pick and choose what you want to take,
I think
which is
the best thing. The best phrase I've ever heard from a winemaker, at least here in the Valley, is from Liz Silkman. I think she said it, saying there's no such thing as a bad year. There's no such thing. It's just a year where you get to show why you're the winemaker.
Yeah.
Right? You get to show that you know how to use the tools at your disposal to make good wine. It's not a bad year. You just have to prove that you can do it. Right? I think that's great.
That's great, yeah.
You need to be able to show that you're here for a reason, right?
Yeah. The other thing that kind of pops in my head and in talking to you is that in one of the other, I think in YouTube, you called yourself the encyclopedia. Someone called you the encyclopedia.
Yep.
And you're very much that, this a wealth of knowledge just kind of like
I really
sitting
appreciate
there.
that. Thank you. Yeah, that's a Wendy phrase, calling me the encyclopedia. Frank and Wendy are very willing to trust that Brett and I know what we're doing. And one of the reasons for that is because of the information that we maintain in our brains. And all winemakers tend to be very smart people, right? You have to be able to make wine. It's just chemistry. That's all winemaking is. And if you can't do that, you can't make good wine. But the having that ability to look at something and just absorb it and keep it in your brain is definitely something that's rewarding for me. And I love reading. I have my own encyclopedia in the lab over there, and it has every grape variety in it. And I've gone through that book. There's like 1,300 different Vitis vinifera grape varieties that it has in there, and go through there, look at that, and it just, for whatever reason, it sticks in my brain. Like I said, I did agriculture for my first degree, right? God, I hated studying agriculture. Hated it with a passion, truly. Could not care less about grass, but I had to do it. That information didn't necessarily stick in my brain so well. But studying wine, because it's something I love, it is sticking. And especially when it comes to those alternate varieties that I get to learn about, that sticks in my brain, which is why Wendy calls me the encyclopedia. It's a really cool tool to have at my disposal, for sure. And one of those things that we're doing with that tool is looking at new varieties to plant here at Sadler's.
Yeah.
I've been looking at grafting over the top of our Merlot down there, just on the other side of the winery, because Merlot is struggling in the Hunter Valley these days. It ripens a bit late, and by the time it's getting ripe, the birds are just feasting on it. They decimates it. Last year, I pulled 6 kilos out of that block.
Wow.
The whole block.
Wow.
Versus up in the Shiraz block where we pulled out 4 tons. 6 kilos versus 4 tons is insane. The block's the same size.
Wow.
The birds, it sits so close to town that the birds just hop, skip, and a jump for them to get from town into the vineyard and just destroy everything. So we're looking at grafting a new variety on it that is more disease resistant, better suited to the Hunter Valley. The one I have in mind at the moment is a variety called Negro Amaro. Again, another Italian variety. Ripens a little bit later than Shiraz does, but it's got very thick skins. It's super disease resistant. It's used to cold weather. It's used to hot weather and droughts. It should be able to stand up to everything the hunter throws at it. But without that sort of encyclopedia knowledge that Wendy likes to say, I wouldn't have even thought of it, right?
All right. So we're going to try the Shiraz.
So this is our Aurelia Shiraz. So Hunter Valley Shiraz comes from 2 different vineyards just down the road. One's 500 meters that way and the other one's 500 meters on the other side of the road. I mean, straight away you can see it's got some beautiful color in the glass. We named this the Aurelia after Frank and Wendy's first granddaughter, who was born in 2022, and they wanted to do something to commemorate her. And so Aurelia Shiraz is what they came up with. And it's a really yummy wine. This was probably where we first started switching the style of our Hunter Valley stuff. For a long time, we had produced our Hunter Valley wines similar to South Australia in that everything was crushed and it was macerated on skins for a long time, cold soaked for a really long time. And it was treated like it was meant to be a big chunky wine. But Hunter Valley fruit is not that. And this year we were far more delicate. There was a whole bunch of some carbonic maceration. It was keeping skins intact. It was not letting those bitter phenolics escape into the wine so much. And you get this really interesting, like crushed glazed cherry, black cherry on the nose, that almost confectionery cherry character that comes with carbonic maceration. And that's kind of been a turning point for the wine style of Sadler's, is that we are doing things in less of an old school way and starting to try a lot more new techniques in our winemaking, which is really cool. Interesting to see how things are coming out the other side, and it's making some cracking wine. And it's things that we have the ability to do, especially from our vineyard, where we can go into the vineyard and I can make sure that all the fruit is being meticulously maintained all on its own. I don't need to stress that something might not be happening that I can't see. I go out there, I drop some of the fruit, cut it off the vine as it's growing so that the stuff that's left gets more concentrated and gets more flavor, gets more color, leaf plucking and shoot thinning to improve the canopy, to reduce our need to have disease control measures because we're at less risk from disease. And all of this stuff amounts to producing a much finer, much more impressive style of wine. And so that's kind of what's come out into this.
Yeah. The word that kind of pops in my head is pretty. It's a very pretty wine. It's very fruit forward, made through because you're doing carbonic.
Yep.
There's not much tannins that kind of
they're much
comes from.
finer. I think. Yeah. Is probably the best way to put it. Is I like pretty. Pretty's a good word, and it is still very young. This wine will look awesome in about 2 or 3 more years. That color should still stay there. But those tannins that are in there, Hunter Valley tannins are not the big, chewy, dry amount tannins of the Barossa or Coonawarra Cabernets. They are finer. They are like chalk dust that just floats away in the wind, but they are there. If you taste that wine and rub your tongue along the roof of your mouth, you'll feel that your tongue starts to dry out. That's the tannins polymerizing with the saliva in your mouth. And that's proof that they're there, but they're sneaky. They're hidden. They're not over the top and dominating. That's why Hunter Valley Shiraz is so renowned, because it is a Shiraz that it's not French tannins, which are big and chewy. It's not South Australian tannins, which are big and chewy. It's fine and it's pretty and it's just easy to drink. Even at a reserve wine, much like that Piquepoul, you can sit there and contemplate it and look at it for as long as you want, or you can just drink it. And really, that's what we want to be making here at Sadler's, stuff that you can do both with.
It's definitely got its own identity. Sorry.
I was saying, it feels very kind of more red fruited, but then has this kind of hint of clay or earth behind it, which draws it towards that kind of black spectrum that's coming to me. But
I think I see this this raspberry and cassis thing right at the front of the wine. Then as you taste it, it goes into those like black currants, all this ribenery in the back palate. And that big pop of fruit is what you see from that carbonic and whole bunch especially.
Yeah. Cool. I want to kind of talk back to your encyclopedic knowledge.
None of us can speak today.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
And then how does that work with you and Brett though? Like, are you both kind of like, crazy alchemists that go, I want to do this or do that? Or is there like a kind of nice balance and dynamic?
Brett and I have a very good working relationship, which is really good. I wouldn't be able to work with someone that I couldn't work with. It's as simple as that. But Brett has a very traditional knowledge of winemaking. He worked for Penfolds for a time. He worked at Mount Pleasant with Phil Ryan for a time. He's been here. He's got his own brand, all of that. He studied in South Australia at the Adelaide University, which I think is the oldest one in Australia for winemaking. And he has a wealth of knowledge for that. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful for. I am still learning. Like I said before, I'm still quite young. Brett's got 10 years on me. I've only been in the wine game for since I finished my first degree, which was 2019, so 5 years. I've only been around
Officially, they said you start at 6, so it's really 20 years. Right?
Yeah, exactly right. True. I've been here for a little while. I've been at Sadler's for 3 years now, and there's so much for me to learn. Sure, I like to think I've got a lot of brain on me, but nothing beats experience, and Brett has that on me in multitudes, as do many others in the Valley. My saving grace is that I remember things sometimes. You can ask Brett, he'll say something else. But it's up to him. Brett's a very smart man. I'm very grateful to be able to work with him. And probably the biggest thing that we get hassled for in the Hunter Valley is Brett is an excellent project manager. He's excellent at it. And because of that, we just about work a 9 to 5 vintage. Where everyone else is working 18, 20 hours a day. And somehow Brett has everything so organized down to a T that if something goes wrong, we're still finishing at 5 o'clock. And everyone else likes to take the piss out of us. They're like, you guys aren't real winemakers. You guys are finishing, you guys are having a beer at 4 o'clock and going home. That's not a real thing. You don't get to do that during vintage. But there goes a long way to be organized, which is really, really, I'm so grateful for that. Truly.
Yeah, because imagine you just going through your book of grapes, go, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this.
He really reins me in. That's probably one of Brett's superpowers, is saying, Sam, chill out just for 5 seconds and think. We only have so many tanks. We can't keep getting more varieties. You have to stop.
And it's a good partnership then.
It's very important. Yeah, it is.
So we do want to get onto the Sagrantino as well.
Sorry.
And alternate varieties is interesting. As you pour the wines out, because you were saying it earlier, climate change, and I think when you were on the Wine Matters podcast, you were discussing it, you almost gave a doomsday impression of Hunter is the way I perceived it. If we don't adapt and change, and so the difference in terms of climate change 10 years ago to now, are you able to articulate what's the difference?
Well, my biggest issue with articulating that is 10 years ago I was 16. I wasn't allowed to drink wine. I wasn't working up here. So I'm not totally on top of it. But the Hunter has always had good and bad years. That's just the way the world works.
Yeah,
we have good years, we have bad years, La Nina, El Nino. They change the way the climate will be. They change how things are going to be as an end product, down to the humidity in the wine shed. It will depend on how the barrels age, right? 10 years ago, 2014, I think, was one of the best vintages the Hunter has ever seen. Just ask the Hunter. It produced brilliant Shiraz. I think Semillon was good that year, or maybe it was good a different year. I'm terrible with Hunt Valley history, truly. And then the last 2 years have been some of the earliest years on record. We've seen people picking fruit before the new year. We are seeing incredibly early onset of flowering. One of the big issues is that our flowering is happening before the wattles and the gums do, which means the birds will come and eat our fruit before they eat the native fruit, which is a big issue. I've had a lot of phone calls this year from people saying, Sam, where can I buy nets from? I'm really worried about the birds this year. Because it's a real issue because of that climate change is changing the way that things are ripening. Now, we can denote it as down to the fact that we've had a couple of, I think it's La Nina years in a row. I can never remember which one's which. But we shouldn't have that. That's a new thing. It usually has a 3 to 4 year cycle and then it changes back. But now we've had 2 cycles in a row of the same thing. And that's a concern. We're seeing more severe hail events up here. We're seeing more disease pressure because we're seeing a lot of rain. I mean, look at the moment, it's probably 80% humidity at the moment and we're in an air-conditioned shed.
Yeah.
It's crazy. With all of that comes risk of disease, risk of bugs. We also have the risk of new diseases being introduced from people coming in, lots of tourism. The Hunter Valley's whole thing is tourism. And with people coming in comes the risk of disease. Hence why you see all these signs through the valley that say, please don't walk in our vine, because what we're scared of is things being introduced, right? There's a series of diseases and pests from other countries that if they were to come here would decimate us.
Yeah.
There's a lot of vines out here that are on original rootstock still. If we were to get the risk of something like phylloxera, you guys have heard of phylloxera, yep. We would then, those vineyards would just go. That's it. It's game over. We here at Sadler's, we're on phylloxera-resistant rootstock, so we're not too worried about that. But even then, it's still a worry.
So
I do sound like a doomsday sayer quite a lot, but I don't think of it as doomsday. I think of it as being realistic about the need for change. I heard something the other day from someone a grower down in South Australia that said the Hunter Valley is great weather for growing bananas because it's hot and it's humid.
Right.
But there's no bananas around.
There's no bananas around. No, it's not that great. But we need to adapt.
Yeah.
The climate can change as much as it wants. We can't do a lot to stop that ourselves as winemakers, but we can adapt. We can get used to it and we can fix those issues, and things that will fix those issues are new varieties, new management practices. Hence why I'm doing that spur pruning trial out there to manipulate the canopy in a way where I am less at risk of mold growing on the leaves rather than just having to spray it to get rid of it, right? And like I said with the Merlot, Negro Amaro, a variety that is incredibly disease resistant, got very thick skins. It's used to hot sun and high UV, which we see up in the Hunt. I mean, we'll have days this year of 40, 45 plus degrees easily. It happens. It's happened years in a row now. I remember getting in the car at 40 degrees when I left work at 5 o'clock, and by the time I got home at 5:30, it was 43 degrees.
Yeah.
Went up in temperature at that time of the afternoon. It was insane. You couldn't get in the car without burning yourself. It was crazy.
I think it's a really difficult job, especially as a winery and a vineyard where you're trying to read the tea leaves, but it's not till you plant something, it's like 5 years later or 10 years later before you actually see it. And things can change from then till now.
Incredibly so. That's one of the biggest scary things is, of course, I want to do this job. And I mean, Brett's there on the sideline saying, Sam, settle down.
Yeah.
And I do need to, because if I just go for it and it doesn't work, well, shoot, we just spent a few $1,000s on trying to fix the vineyard and now everything's changed.
Yeah.
But I think you really have to just jump into change sometimes.
Yeah.
And
don't wait for
everyone
doom
else
to happen to you. You
exactly
forge
right.
your path.
We need to jump into change. And I think that is what's going to put people ahead at the moment, is if they jump into change. You're seeing people like, you guys had a chat with Mike Diulius, didn't you, right? No? Tomo. Sorry, you chatted to Tomo. Mike has got some new alternative varieties in the Hunter. Something like Pecorino is a really weird left of field one that no one's had up here before.
Isn't that a cheese?
Yeah, exactly. Same sort of thing, right? No one wants to drink cheese wine, but his Pecorino is beautiful. I think it's called that because it's from the same region. Pecorino cheese, Pecorino grapes. And it is a beautiful textural white variety. Probably similar in style to Chardonnay. Himself or Emily Glover would be better at explaining it than I am, because I've never worked with it. But it's experimenting with these new varieties, and these people that are experimenting or scarbs with their Vermentino that they've planted. These new varieties are what's going to lead the Hunter into surviving, I guess. And the Hunter is old school.
Yeah.
The Hunter is, we've made Shiraz, Chardonnay and Semillon for years and years and years. And we need to do more, because it won't always grow perfectly.
Yeah. And need to trial more.
While we keep talking about alternatives, let's talk about this Sagrantino. Yeah. What is it?
Yeah, so Sagrantino is actually one of the rarest commercial varieties in the world. There's about 1,000 hectares of it worldwide. 90% of that is in Italy, and the other 10% is split between Australia and America. There's a small handful of families. We get this from the Amadio family in South Australia, so an Italian family that's been around for yonks and yonks. We go down to South Australia each year to look at our fruit down there, and going to this vineyard is one of my favorite things because it's just enormous. Like this, I think the vineyard produces the better part of 1,500 tons a year of just fruit, right?
Yeah.
It's a crazy number. But they do it really well, and their Italians are something that they take a lot of care of, and it's stuff that very few people have. Now, Sagrantino itself is from the region of Umbria in Italy, so central Italy.
Yeah.
My colloquial phrase for this is the Coonawarra Cab Sav of Italy. That's probably what I would liken it to the most. It's got that really rich red earth sort of color to it, but it's got this beautiful cassis, blackcurrant, but herbaceous nose on it. It's got this really, not like green grassy herbaceousness and not medicinal, but like clove spice and allspice and like if you put everything you can into a mortar and pestle and see how you go. And that's the spice you get with this. It's not so much that baking spice. It's got that anise, that licorice that just sets it apart. And it's such a strange variety, and very few people have heard of it, right?
Have you had a Sagrantino before?
No. I don't think I have.
Yeah, so like I said, it is one of the rarest varieties that you can find. Few people grow it out here. I would love to get some up here, but it is just so late ripening that it wouldn't grow in the Hunter. And again, it's one of those things you got to consider with alternative varieties is when will it ripen, when does it grow, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I find it, you said it's like the Cabernet, but I feel it's more perfumed. It's a bit more, I don't know, like creamy, fruity.
If you could liken this to a variety, what would you compare it to? What's your go? Icebreaking questions. You're on.
Oh,
He's reversing the role.
let me think about that.
I love the smell of this.
It's just different.
When you're talking about mortar and pestle spices, it's like these fine grained spices. Just it's not overpowering at all. It makes you really think about.
I think
what
one
you're
of the
smelling.
keys with producing these sort of varieties, and you can see it with the Monty as well, is we are almost exclusively using the oldest oak that we can find. That's 2013 oak. So that oak is 11 years old. It's 11 years old, so it's imparting next to no oak flavor into the wine because we just want this to be the fruit. So this has next to no character of the oak in the wine. That is just what the fruit tastes like. That is not oak spice, that's fruit spice.
Yeah. I've got an answer now. I feel it's like a Grenache with grip.
A Grenache with grip. Yeah, I can see it. A real, like, you have that almost like
earthy
Tara Rose sort of thing
on the
in Grenache
red,
sometimes. Yeah.
but it's got more grip than what you would get from a Grenache. But it's
absolutely.
more on the fruit rather than tannin, but has that kind of bit of that earth to it as well.
Yeah, well, I think earth and tannins are very good phrase. Sagrantino has the highest content of antioxidants of any grape variety. So it's healthy for you, right? It is one of the highest tannin content varieties, full stop. It is up there. This is a wine that if it's big enough, you need a knife and fork to get through it, right? You have to chew on this. I think this wine will age beautifully. I cannot wait to see it at 6 years, 8 years, 10 years old, because I think that is what it's made.
Yeah.
So when was the first time you released it?
This came out in 21.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, sorry, it
So
came out
that's
in
the first
22.
Yeah, okay.
But the fruit is from 21. And that's the only time we've done it. I would love to get my hands on some more fruit, but it's hard to find and it's not cheap. So
It's limited.
because it is so rare.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. It's a very different variety, not something that you see every day, that's for sure. I hadn't even heard of it until I was looking at we have basically big fruit registry, so people can post what sort of fruit that they have to sell.
Like
We
a
just call
eBay.
them up. Yeah, kind of like eBay, but for grapes. South Australia is very good at it. They've got a massive, very well-run site on what's what and what's where. And so I'm going through this website and I'm like, what the hell is Sagrantino? I've never heard of that in my life. And this was one of the few times where Brett was like, it's fine, just get it. And so we did. We got Sagrantino, we got Aglianico, and we got Barbera. Aglianico is all sold out. That was another one of those volcanic varieties from Mount Etna, Campagna Basilicata. It's like a sucker punch of a wine. You have this beautiful violet and lavender aromatics. It's got this deep, rich color, and then you taste it, and it's like really light, crunchy cherries. It looks so dark and intimidating, but then the wine itself is beautiful and fine-boned and pretty, and those Italian wines are just so good at that. Now, there's nothing about this wine that's fine-boned. Don't get me wrong. This is a big boy. But it's cool that there's so much versatility out there.
It's big, but it's not.
It's not a Barossa.
It's not Barossa big. It's not leather, chocolates, cocoa, kind of tar. It's not that. It's
still trying to glue your tongue to the roof of your mouth with those tannins.
Yeah. But the tannins aren't, it's not huge. It's like really fine.
Yes. Similar to that Hunter Shiraz. It's probably a bit, definitely chewier than the Hunter Shiraz, I would say. The Hunter Shiraz, it's its own little spectrum. But yeah, they are still fine. They're still quite dusty tannins, I think is what people would call it, dusty tannins or chalky tannins. Not overbearing, but they definitely coat your whole mouth.
Yeah. No, you're saying it's more about the fruit. There's not much of the kind of oak on it, but the length on it. Carries, and normally you get it from the oak or whatever like that. And this one, it just, it's like, Grenache had its moment, but you could grow more Sagrantino. I feel like this would have its moment as well.
I think the reason why we don't is people struggle to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just can't order it over the
You just got to give it like the Aussie slang onto it, like the saggy, or I don't know.
Sagra.
No one wants to drink
Sagra.
wine called the
Sagra.
saggy, do they?
Saggy.
Or the sagrag. That's not good, right? Yeah, people. No one wants to say the full name, and no one wants to shorten that name. It's just not a good name.
Or you give
they
it,
will change its name.
or give it a new Australian name that's completely different.
Yeah, exactly right.
Got to respect the heritage, I think.
You gotta respect the heritage.
Look, I think it's a great example, and this whole tasting has been a great example of what's happening in Sadler's Creek, but also where the future could go.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope that the future is a future of new things and experimenting.
Yes.
It has to be.
So trying the wines here, you mentioned Aaron Mercer as well. I feel like Hunter's on this tipping point where there's alternative varieties that could shape the new identity of the future identity of Hunter, which is exciting.
Absolutely. It is such an exciting time to be. And like I said, as much as I'm a doomsday sayer about the climate, it's exciting. It's exciting because it's paramount to change. Everything is just like about to tip over the edge, and people are going to see all that potential that's there, which is really, really cool. The future of the Hunter Valley is exciting.
Absolutely.
Because it has to be, and that's the best.
And so we're probably at the tail end of the interview here. Did you have any last questions before we wind up?
I think along the same lines where I think historically Hunter is always one of the earliest in terms of picking, and therefore you've had to make those choices early in terms of going alternative. And I think about you kind of hedging your bets, right?
Yeah.
You're still doing
100%.
your stuff with Alessandro.
Yep.
But then you also have the Winemakers Craft where then you can experiment. So you kind of go both ways. And I love it how, you're taking, you got the balls to kind of go out there, experiment, and you might hit on some and might miss on others as well.
Yeah,
but at least you're having a crack at it, And
like I said, you got to be able to find a way to fix the things that go wrong, right?
yeah. So I find it, again, very exciting in terms of just like the last one there, the Sagrantino or the Saggy.
Yep.
There's,
Trying to make it stick. I like
make it a thing.
that's something I'll have again,
Yep. Love a saggy.
And so
You can't say it. It's horrible. Truly.
So as we wind up here, Sam, did you have any last messages for our listeners, our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, we are coming up to vintage. We'll have our vintage harvest day where people can come along, pick the fruit, get involved in the winemaking, which is a really cool thing to do. Our end of harvest lunch, all of that. Being a member of Sadler's is very rewarding because you get to come to all of these things. You get to try all of the beautiful wines and bring your friends here. It's a beautiful place to be a part of because we get to treat people like family here. If we have members come here, you guys met Kath and Amelia out on the cellar door when you first got here, and I'm pretty terrible with names, but they will go out there and they will know each person by name. It's incredible. Maybe that's just their memory, but that is what is helping to build Sadler's, is that it is a friendly place where we want to treat people like family. We want people to know that we know who they are. We are a winemaker, and the average person that comes in to do a tasting is the exact same person. There's no reason why anyone will get treated differently, and so they don't, right? Doesn't matter if you're making wine at the best place in the world or you're two blokes that came up from Sydney to try some wine, right? Everyone's getting treated exactly the same because it needs to be treated the same. We love having people here. We love looking after people, and that's so important. We have so much going on at Sadler's, and it's a very exciting time. Like I said, we have that event space up the top. That is becoming a beautiful, beautiful little area up there, so we're pretty stoked about that. Sadler's Creek's an exciting place to be a part of, especially with all these new varieties. If you want to try new wines, you want to try new styles, new things, there's few places that are better than that. So
well said.
I would love to see more people coming up here. Like I said, we are a young place in the valley, so having people come and visit and come here for the first time. So often do we hear people coming up and they'll be like, I've been to 6 places today and we came here at the end and this is the best place we've been. And they're like, we've never even heard of you. And we just accidentally drove past and looked like it was really busy. So we came in. Sure, it was busy. We still looked after them. And then they're like, this was the best tasting we've had our entire trip. We're very proud of how we look after people. And so getting people to come up here and experience it for the first time is just awesome.
That's great. Trent, any last messages for you?
No, I think along those lines, the thing that kind of stood out with Sadler's Creek and also just looking through the websites around is about experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that immersive experience of wine, people, food and everything. So I think you try and go out of your way trying to create that. So I think, if you get the chance, head out to Sadler's Creek.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to end with what the vision for Saddlers Creek is, which is to celebrate life's simple pleasures of time spent with good friends and family while enjoying good food and great wine. We're going to try the food in a second, but certainly all of that, it's a place where you're going to have those occasions and memories. There's perfect spaces here. For your family, for your friends to enjoy a good time. But the wines are also great. And trying the new varieties here, it's a sign of where the future is going to go for Hunter. So it's been fantastic.
Thanks so much, guys. That's
Sam,
awesome.
Thanks for hosting us here and thanks for joining us on the podcast. For our listeners, also listen to the Wine Matters podcast. That's the Saddlers Creek wine podcast that they have here. And come up to Hunter and visit it here. Great.
Thanks so much, guys.
No worries. As we like to say here, have some more wine. As we like to say here, drink more, try more, learn more. Thanks all.